and welcome to round 6 here at Grand Prix Portland. We've got a great match for you. On the left of our screen, we've got Alex West at the front. He's joined by Dan Hansen and Mike Gurney. On the other side of things, we've got Chris Fennell, Seth Manfield and Frank Skarren. That number 18 next to Chris Fennell's name indicates that he is currently the 18th ranked player in the world, and that's the match we're starting on, him against Alex West. So left of our screen, West starts off with a Loyal Cathar on his plain start, and red and black mana for Chris Fennell, so potentially a kind of controlling, removal heavy deck from there we might expect.
Yeah, and that's definitely what Fennell likes to play. He's a lawyer, you know, that's his style. Just past the bar, actually.
Congratulations to him, not an easy task.
I think it was within 2 weeks of the Pro Tour, so he didn't get to test much for Pro Tour M15. Still put up a decent run, and here he is at Grand Prix Portland. Yeah,
Sungrace Pegasus there, a little bit outmatched by Necrogen Scudder. I mean, it does cost Chris Fennell 3 life at the point he casts it, but now it's in play. It's a 3/3 flyer, which is pretty dominant against most flyers in the format. Thus far, Alex West on a mono-white deck, and now seeing a Borderland Marauder there, that a 1/2 on defense, but able to attack for 3. It's +2 power whenever it attacks. Potentially a very powerful addition to Chris Fennell's board there.
Yeah, these are 2 very powerful cards from Chris Fennell here. Alex West, his board not quite as impressive right now, but as the white deck, he kind of has a lot of potential in terms of the explosiveness of his deck. He really wants to get ahead on these early turns, but it doesn't look like that's necessarily going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk earlier on about the white decks being sort of the powerhouse decks in the format. We've not necessarily seen that play out too much in our feature match area. Altac Bloodseeker there joining the fray for Chris Fennell, which if it's paired up with removal spells, which realistically in red-black it should be, potentially quite a powerful attacker. And there the Pegasus coming in for a cheeky point. Lifelink there on the flying 1/2 Pegasus, meaning that it gains a point of life for Alex West by dealing damage there. But the swings back substantially larger for Chris Fennell, able to take a big chunk out of Alex West's life total. And that there, a big pickup from Chris Fennell, that being the Nightfire Giant. Naturally a 4/3, becomes a 5/4 thanks to him having a mountain in play. And had it stayed in play, he'd have been able to pay 5 mana to start dealing 2 damage to creatures and players. So
yeah, one of the better uncommons in the set, Nightfire Giant. A huge incentive to play black and red in the same deck. Oftentimes we'll see players simply splash red for Nightfire Giant or splash black for Nightfire Giant. But if you have the opportunity to actually play a black-red deck, if your pool allows you to do so, then it's a perfect fit, obviously.
Pillar of Light, though, dealing with that Giant, and a follow-up planes, meaning that a Griffin now coming down for Alex West. 2/2 flying and first strike there. Able to shore things up a little bit, but for the fact that there's a timely Covenant of Blood from Chris Fennell. Didn't need the Convoke, was able to just tap 7 lands to deal 4 damage and gain 4 life, meaning that all of his creatures free to attack in. And up top there, Chris Fennell there just pointing out that it's not just a 2/1 right now. That
has an additional 2 power and first strike.
The Altac Bloodseeker +2 power and first strike, given that a creature had already died on his opponent's side of the board. So a big, big swing there from the Bloodseeker. Alex West on just 4 life. And while Triplicate Spirits has come down for him here, have to think that this game is not going to last a huge amount longer unless Alex West is able to draw into his second color. We can see that he's got green cards in hand, or at least play something pretty big.
It looks like Alex West is, in fact, green-white. Unable to find a second color here.
Yeah, and Heat Ray there on one of those Triplicate Spirits, meaning that the next-gen Scud are able to attack him without a problem. And Chris Fennell here is just sort of throwing everything on the board saying, look, can you deal with all this stuff? Because there's plenty going on, and any one of these things can kill you. Now, if I'm Alex West here, I've just drawn my forest. I don't think I play it. I think I say, you know what? I'm never winning this game. I don't want to give the extra information away. And he scoops up his cards. Hopefully he didn't flash that forest there, otherwise it would all have been for naught. But yeah, Chris Fennell taking a very, very quick game 1 over Alex West there.
Very aggressive game there.
Looks like we've also got a game completed for Dan Hansen against Seth Manfield. We'll try and find out the score for that in a second. But we're jumping across now to see Mike Gurney against Frank Skarren. Frank has a GP win in the last year or so, and he's got plenty of creatures for his green-white deck in play, unlike what we saw from Alex West there, and able to get a few hits in. We'll try and find out exactly what those tokens are for you, just so that we can make sure that everything's represented properly on the board. Mike Gurney has blockers, though. One squid still in play. I'm guessing that may have been another squid there that died off. And some more Convoke for Frank Skarren. What's he got next? That will be a Triplicate Spirit. So while we're finding a token, just to make sure everything's clear on this board, we're going to find 3 more Flying Spirit tokens. Frank Skarren onto a bit of a monster start here.
Yes, and with that Paragon in play, that's 6 points of flying power from that Triplicate Spirits there. It's going to be very difficult for Mike Gurney to find a way out of this one.
So there we see that that was a soldier token, presumably from Raise the Alarm or similar. 3 Flying Spirit tokens, currently 2/2s thanks to that Paragon that's in play. Soulmender, a great addition to this sort of deck, and Skarren here able to just really dominate the early points of this game.
Yeah, Skarren looks to have a very powerful green-white deck. It's what Alex West was hoping to put together against his opponent, Chris Fennell.
Covenant of Blood there, dealing with Skarren's Paragon there, but that kind of just one piece of the puzzle, really, in terms of this Convoke deck. Even though he's only got 4 lands in play, even now, plenty going on. There's always that moment when all the creatures tap where you're like, is this an attack? Is this a gigantic something or other convoked? Pretty sure it's an attack at this point.
Yes, it looks to be so.
And all of a sudden, Mike Gurney down to just 11 life. Oppressive Raise there on one of his creatures, meaning that he's not able to attack and block quite as freely as he might otherwise like. Skarren really kind of looking to stick it to his opponent before he's able to mount too much of a defense.
And now it's extremely useful for him to get rid of that Paragon. The attack would have been for an additional 4 points of damage, not even counting the Paragon getting in there otherwise. And now he's able to grind his life total back up a bit with that Maggot, and soon he'll, you know, he looks to be in a decent spot. The Triplicate Spirits are going to keep pegging away at his life total, but if he can find a flyer, it's not the end of the world here for Mike.
Yeah, I mean, Rotfeast to Maggot, the absolute perfect roadblock on the ground, but Triplicate Spirits, I mean, in some respects, better than 1/3/3 flyer because they get pumped. They convoke things. If you kill one, there's still more damage coming through. They're really one of the premium commons in the set, let alone in white. And Frank Skarren here quite happy to say, I'm just going to send things through to the red zone, because now, unlike previous turns, he's up to 5 mana. There could easily be a Sanctified Charge here, and that would just be game-breaking.
Yeah, so here we're going to see Sanctified Charge from Skarren, and that's going to be pretty brutal.
So all of his creatures there getting +2/+1. All of the white creatures also getting first strike. So he does lose
for 9 damage, putting Mike down to 4 here.
Yeah, 4 life, not a happy place to be when there's Triplicate Spirits plus some friends on the other side of the board. Gonna need to find something pretty big. The Necrogen Scudder he just picked up there, not the answer he was looking for at all.
No, not
can't
at all.
afford the 3 life for that 3/3 flyer. But he's having a look. It looks like there might be a Liliana Vess in his hand. Not really the mana to do much with it, though. I mean, there's a tough matchup for blue-black, I think, because the green-white deck can come out so quickly.
Post-board, the blue-black deck might have a few copies of Festergloom, and there are a number of other things that the blue-black can do to stay on top. I mean, if you have some sort of lifelink, that really mitigates the damage that Triplicate Spirits puts out, unless it's able to be combined with something like Sanctified Charge or Selfless Cathar.
So a negate there, protecting the Rotfeast and Maggot just for a turn, but that not a complete answer by any stretch of the measure. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not Mike Gurney is able to do much here. I mean, Festergloom certainly will be great out of the sideboard for him. It's something that I've seen considered for main decks for an awful lot of decks in this format, just because both as a nod to the power of the white decks, but actually quite a lot of decks in the format can struggle if they take too many of their creatures knocked out by just the one spell.
Yeah, I think Festergloom is very main deckable in this format. The most amazing Festergloom play we've seen so far today was certainly Luis Scott Vargas using it in conjunction with Polymorphous Jest.
Yeah, that one got a slow clap from the
yes,
from the Twitch stream at least.
Yeah, my heart skipped a beat. I was very happy with that.
But it looks like now we're in a position where everyone's shuffling up again. So frequently the case that things seem to kind of be synchronized magic, partly because if there's interesting things going on one or other side of you while you're shuffling, you might take a bit longer to shuffle to have a little look-see, discuss what might be going on for future games. So whichever game starts first is likely they're going to be the one that we jump across to here. We see a couple of different players presenting at the same time. If there's particular matches that you're keen on, do let us know in the chat. We'll try and bring you bits and pieces. Likewise, if there's players that you know that you really want to see, do let us know. We'll try and bear that in mind when we're picking out feature matches. Though, realistically, there's a lot of factors at play picking feature matches. We obviously can't put everyone in the area. It's always just going to be the one match in the area with 3-on-3s here. But we're starting off now with another game between Alex West and Chris Fennell. So Alex on the left, Chris Fennell on the right of our screen. And a generator servant there from Chris. Raise the alarm coming from Alex, so he gets 2 soldier tokens right on time there on turn 2. Playing them at the end of Chris Fennell's turn, so effectively it's kind of like they got haste. Chris Fennell didn't know that they were coming, though he may have suspected it, and now they're going to get to swing in.
Raise the alarm is one of the reasons why Generator Servant isn't that great in this limited format. It's only going to trade with half of that if it is going to trade with that at all. It's probably going to be a ramp spell here for Chris. Chris also on the mulligan here, so using that as a ramp spell is going to put him behind by quite a few cards. If he happens to run into a removal spell, he could find himself in a world of trouble here.
Yeah, certainly not ever where you want to be with mulligans, but I mean, potentially here he's going to be able to string something together if he can kind of get past this early surge of attacks from Alex West. Alex West there with Sungrace Pegasus, kind of a surprise hit of the format if you ask me. A 1-2 flying lifelink for 2 seems fairly underwhelming, but with so many ways of enhancing it, with the fact it's got 2 toughness rather than 1, it's just very well placed in the format.
I agree. I think it's pretty easily the best white 2-drop in the format as far as the commons go.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, though, because, I mean, when I first looked at the set in terms of trying to plan things out for my pre-release, I was sort of thinking, wow, a Reskos Swiftclaw, it's a 3-1 for 2. We've known it's great in other formats. What's going to change here? And the answer is there's a ton of ways of killing off 1 toughness creatures. And meanwhile, you've got the likes of your Sungrace Pegasus getting +1/+1 counters and turning into a mini Exalted Angel.
Yes, very much so. My favorite thing to do in the game of Magic, in Limited in general, is to build a Baneslayer Angel. So Sungrace Pegasus is obviously...
It's a step in the right direction.
Just a step in the right direction, exactly. I'll take that thing very high.
Obnixilis Unshackled, though, an unmitigated first pick. Costs 6 mana normally, Generator Servant helping out a little bit there. And I think that, assuming it can stay in play for a little while, it counts as getting back out of your mulligan to me. 4/4 flying trample for 6, pretty good to start with. Whenever another creature dies, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Creatures die in Limited quite a bit, especially when you're playing a red-black deck. And then, on the off chance that Alex West decides that he wants to search his library, he's going to have to sacrifice a creature and lose 10 life. No jokes there. And right now, Alex West still stuck on 2 lands. Not quite where he wants to be. A Heat Ray from Chris Fennell means that... Oh, Ranger's Guile, keeping alive his Pegasus. That a big play. He certainly didn't want to lose it for a number of reasons, one of which being that +1/+1 counter wouldn't have just disappeared. It would have gone straight onto Obnixilis for that death.
Certainly.
So a big Convoke here. There's a Siege Worm. 2 lands, not holding Alex West back too much. Able to cast the 5/5, principally using Convoke, though he is going to be potentially taking a bit of a hit from Obnixilis for his trouble.
Yeah, Alex probably quite happy to be stuck on 2 lands here. I mean, he's still been able to put a huge amount of pressure on the board. His opponent's on the mulligan. Now, as he draws into lands, when the game goes later, he'll be able to cast the rest of these juicy cards that are left in his hand, while his opponent has already long run out of gas.
I mean, we see there Alex West draws an extra card, and that's another Plains. He's got Avacyn, a Guardian Angel, in his hand. Potentially a very strong card, but the strongest card right now, we've been talking about it all weekend, it seems. Pillar of Light finds another great target. This time it's Obnixilis. Get out of my game. I don't want to see you in here anymore. I understand all of the time and trouble and effort that Brad Muir went to design this one. We got this is one of the cards designed by a guest designer. You really wanted to get involved with Obnixilis, bring him back after Zendikar. Chris Fennell says, well, fine, if you want to kill my biggest creature, I'm going to kill yours, the flesh to dust. But ultimately, only one player's got creatures left on the board here, and that's Alex West, able to swing in unimpeded now with his entire team, getting a bit of damage.
And Chris Fennell falling down to nothing at this point.
Well, 17. Sorry, 9. It's not quite nothing, but certainly...
Oh, no permanence in play, rather.
Sure.
You know, he is... he's presented lethal also by Alex for the following turn, and he's... If he's going to want to win this game, he really needs, you know, a creature plus a removal spell on this turn, and it has to be a creature that can, you know, live through blocking something like a 3/3 or a 4/4. So it just doesn't seem like there's much of a chance of Fennell winning this game.
I mean, a Festergloom right now would be pretty special. This guy, though, Scrapyard Mongrel, not convinced.
Even Festergloom, I mean, the Sungrace Pegasus as a 2/3, as soon as you put even a single +1/+1 counter on Sungrace Pegasus, the card's power level just skyrockets. A lifelinking flyer with more than 1 power, especially when it can't die to things like Forge Devil or Festergloom, just so strong in this format.
Yeah, so Alex West here just kind of taking a moment to figure out what he's going to do here, because attacks on the ground do mean that he's going to lose creatures. I mean, he's got the potential to use that Cathar if he really wants to, but in point of fact, he's not going to get the kill this turn regardless. So he's a little bit more conservative with his attacks, which I think is correct.
I think I would attack with everything and then just sacrifice the Cathar after blocks. But that's
no guts, no
very
glory.
aggressive. Yes. I mean, he has the restock in hand also, so I don't feel like if this game comes down to cards, I think that Alex has already won that war. And I think if you just constantly apply pressure, then you're going to force Chris into a position where he has to use his removal spells as aggressively as possible, and he's not looking for value anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting example of the distinction between drawing too many lands and drawing too few lands. Often the player with too few lands ends up kind of in a better spot, because once you do draw lands, you've got lots of action. I mean, we see here, they're the planes right on time. Well, maybe not quite right on time, but, you know, you kind of get what I mean.
And Convoke helps, too.
Yeah, Convoke helps a lot. But, yeah, Avacyn Guardian Angel, that's what Alex West is reading here. Lots of lines of text on it, all of them pretty excellent. Even as just a flying 5-floor Vigilance for 5, it's very, very strong indeed. But once you start to factor in the various activated abilities on that Angel, it can prove a big issue, even if your opponent is kind of ahead on the board. Right now, Chris Fennell way behind and having to deal with just a board chock full of threats. And Chris Fennell says, you know what, let's go to game 3. I played my bomb, you beat it. You also beat me in the face with a whole ton of other stuff.
Yes.
So that match now going to 1-1, and we're going to get a chance to see one of our other games. It looks like both of the other games still in progress, so we'll see if we can jump across to one of them for you in just a second. We're going to move to the middle match between Dan Hansen and Seth Manfield. Now, we've not seen too much of this game just yet. Seth Manfield, great magician. It's a funny one that basically only by virtue of him being on a team with Chris Fennell and Frank Skarren does he not shine as being sort of an incredible player, because he's flanked by 2 incredible players. But let us make no mistake.
And he's a great limited mind, first and foremost. I mean, he really is one of the better drafters of the last year and a half. In a lot of Grand Prix, we've seen him go super deep.
And here we see Mark Biona there being a fairly traditional accompaniment to your Heliod's Pilgrim there, but backed up by Dauntless River Marshal as well, with blue mana to use, though admittedly not this turn. He's got a 3/2, he's got a 3/4, and next turn, if he's got 8 mana, he can tap down 2 creatures if he wants. In the meantime, though, Dan Hansen says the best way of threatening this is to just come in and force some kind of activity on the other side of things. The most important card on his side of the board isn't actually a creature at all. If you look just down on the very bottom of his screen there, that's a Sacred Armory. He's got lots of mana up. He can pay 2 mana to give target creature +1 power, and that means that blocks for Seth Manfield are quite a bit trickier here. He's not able to just sort of casually throw his 3-4 in front of his opponent's 3-3 and say, you know, job done. Realistically, Dan Hansen is able to engineer quite a few trades here.
In the Armory, a card that doesn't see that much play in this format. Some people really like it a lot. Others think that it's not the best thing and that you shouldn't be playing it. It's a trade-off because the card is not a card that trades with other cards. So you're essentially giving yourself card disadvantage by playing with the Armory, but then you also, you know, can always trade up. So if you play a lot of creatures, cards like Restock, cards that produce tokens, the Armory increases in value for each of those that you have.
So a welcome turn there, the follow-up creature after Seth Manfield's side of the board effectively wiped by those attacks and trades. It's not going to be able to block any of the creatures that Dan Hansen has because it can only block creatures with flying. Dan Hansen says, well, that's good to know because I'm going to swing in for a bunch and see if I can't just sneak through various points of damage. Now, one card that we've not really mentioned thus far is the card that's stuck under Encrust, because actually it looks like it might be something that's fairly helpful in spite of the fact that it's not untapping.
Oh, is it
That's
the Ogre?
Kirkesh Anarchy Ancient. So that means that whenever
Yes.
you activate an ability of an artifact, if it isn't a mana ability, you can pay red to copy it. So that means that all of a sudden, the Armory that we have in play doing double duty.
Yes. That makes it a little more exciting.
So now, rather than it being 2 to activate, it's kind of 3 to activate twice.
Yes.
A little bit better.
A little bit.
Small edges
quite
win
good.
matches.
That's true.
So at the moment, Seth Manfield on just 2 life and without really any blockers to speak of. Likely to scoop things up here, and there we go. So Dan Hansen able to win his match comparatively quickly and easily there at 2-0 over Seth Manfield. And we're going to get a chance to jump across to one of our other matches here. It looks like Chris Fennell and Alex West have got into their deciding game over there. So up top, Frank Skarren and Mike Gurney shuffling up and sort of having a little think. We'll see if we can find out a little bit more about what's going on here. This being the match between Alex West and Chris Fennell.
Yeah, this game could go either way. We've seen 2 games which were both kind of blowouts so far in this match here.
So this is the match that's ultimately going to decide everything. We've just seen that Frank Skarren won his match 2-0. So on one side of things, we've got Green-White Convoke, one of the classic archetypes that you're going to see lots in your M15 Draft Limited. On the other side, Red-Black, not perhaps quite as evergreen a deck within drafts, but we've certainly seen some power here. Borderland Marauder, Scrapyard Mongrel teaming up with the Paragon that's able to give them both +1, that being Paragon of Fierce Defiance. It can also give red creatures haste, and that's something that we've seen there, meaning that the Scrapyard Mongrel was able to attack as soon as it came into play. Pillar of Light was able to deal with a Mongrel. The downside of being pumped by a Paragon, I suppose, suddenly you become a 4-4 and you're able to be offed by the removal spell. But raise the alarm here, allowing Alex West to slightly rebuild after what appears to have been a slightly edgy start for him.
Yeah, Paragon of Fierce Defiance, pretty easily the best Paragon. Oh, now that's a big turn.
Yeah,
so tell us what just happened there.
Yeah, that was raise the alarm immediately into a convoked triplicate spirits. Kind of the dream.
Yeah, to just vomit it out a brand new board.
Yeah. A full 6 creatures on the board now, where previously there was just a wall. Not what Chris Fennell would have wanted to see at all. He kind of would have wanted to press the advantage that he got early game, knocking the first 7 points of life off. But as it is, he's still able to use his Paragon of Fierce Defiance to make hasty attackers, and that Generator Servant attacking in as a 3-2 thanks to the Paragon. 2 3-2s coming in, forcing Alex West if he wants to get
a 4-3.
Oh, I apologize, yes. 4-3 and a 3-2, the Borderland Marauder also being pumped there. Alex West says, yeah, I'm going to chump that one. I don't really want to take 4. Still has to take the hit from Generator Servant and loses his Spirit that was back on blocks there. But a Siege Worm in his hand, he's not even going to have to convoke it using that many creatures. stops and thinks for a little to decide whether or not he really wants to tap all of his lands or have something up for a trick. But after a little bit of thought, I mean, it's certainly going to be the siege worm coming down. It's just a matter of how to tap his land/creatures to do so.
It's funny to see all of the various fingers pointing at different cards in his hand from outside of the screen.
Yeah, well, I mean, normally we say that on coverage we like to get pretty good at identifying people by their arm hair and by
Yes.
sort of what color shorts they're wearing. We're going to have to get increasingly good at identifying people just by their pointer fingers as they kind of sneak their hands in from off screen to provide little bits of additional advice to their teammates. This now the last match going on between these two teams, so it will ultimately decide which of these teams walks away the victor and which one has to look for its wins elsewhere.
I imagine on this turn we're going to see a removal spell targeting Siege Worm. If we don't, that means that Chris Fennell is in a pretty rough spot. In addition to a removal spell on the Siege Worm, we'll probably only see the Borderland Marauder get in. Generator Servant, even with the Paragon of Fierce Defiance in play, it doesn't match up well against that Wall of Essence.
It looks like there might be a Heat Ray in Chris Fennell's hand, but that just one mana short of being able to deal with a Siege Worm. He'll have to wait on that if he wants to use it.
Oh, he hasn't played a land yet, though,
oh,
right? Yeah.
Bingo, there we go. Thank you very much. I'll kill that one off. Heat Ray, one of the long-standing run of X spells that we've seen in core sets. In some respects, not the most powerful. It can only hit creatures, but actually, instant speed is a big deal.
Instant speed is a huge deal in this format, exactly.
You can play it in response to a pump spell or something, and just generally engineer situations where you're tapping your mana when you want to rather than when your opponent does. And killing off creatures is certainly something you still want to do, so just because it's not a fireball doesn't mean that it's not awesome.
Exactly. The X damage burn spell, always something you want in Limited, even when you can't dome people with it. When you can dome people with it, it just becomes the best thing in the universe.
Yeah, so good that it's almost kind of too good, really. You feel a little dirty when you do it. You're like,
Like, yeah, this card should always be a rare.
And so here we see Alex West saying, well, I've got this restock. I can get 2 cards back, trying to work out how to do so without his teammates tipping it off immediately. Has a little look at his graveyard. I mean, Triplicate Spirits and Siege Worm seems like a fine collection of spells because, well, let's see, he can kind of rebuy on the turn he had earlier on where he just suddenly has a whole ton of creatures in play for not very much mana.
The issue here, though, is if he does rebuy Triplicate Spirits and then tap all of his creatures and replay it on this particular turn, then he's tapping his entire board to do so, and then if Chris Fennell happens to have the right card, let's say he has a Festergloom, for example, then he just loses the game on the spot. I also don't know if he can afford to play around that, so that might still be the play.
So he's not going for Siege Worm. It looks like that's Triplicate Spirits and... that's the Pillar of Light again. So that a nice hedge against anything that might come from Chris Fennell's side of the board, but he's not going to be able to cast the Pillar of Light this turn anyway, so he says, let's do this deal in triplicate. Okay. Different plans again. So
it's a living totem.
Living totem there, meaning that his Wall of Essence a little bit bigger, a little bit... I mean, the good thing about this is that at some point, he might reach a point where that Wall of Essence is able to kill something off. At the moment, at least he's made it so it's big enough that it can block a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it can block Borderland Marauder absolutely changes the dynamic of the game. Chris Fennell, again, was forced to have a removal spell in that spot if he wanted to have a chance here. Especially when you're facing down a restock that just put a Triplicate Spirits and another removal spell back in your opponent's hand. Making that Wall of Essence into a 1/5 just was a brick wall unless Fennell had the removal spell, which he did.
And it's funny thing, because I think that if it were me, I'd be like, I can't believe I'm having to play a removal spell on a wall. Like, you know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And Chris Fennell, an expert in finding the right play in these sorts of matches. You see that 18 next to his name. One of the 18s is his life total. The other one is the fact that he's currently ranked 18th in the world as of this last weekend. I mean, last weekend, the Pro Tour, obviously a lot of shake-ups in the top 25 rankings. But Chris Fennell maintains his spot in the top 25 in spite of the fact that he's, this game, staring down an awful lot of Spirit tokens.
Yeah, he's one of the very best that there are.
Is that another triplicate spirits? Oh
Looks
my.
like it.
Look what you've done, Alex West.
All right, and
Every time there's this many spirits, it always seems to go badly for me.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. That flying 1/1s, they're just my weakness. But yes, all of these flying 1/1s potentially producing quite a bit of a problem for Chris Fennell. Not necessarily to his life total immediately, though that will certainly come into play soon enough, but just because punching through these final points of damage.
Yeah, so something interesting that's going on here also is that the Devouring Light that Alex West had returned to his hand with restock, that card just became extremely live because Fennell just drew his Ob Nixilis. And I'm sure that Fennell's probably a bit frustrated right now because his teammates are probably just saying, oh, play Ob Nixilis, play Ob Nixilis. And he has to somehow keep a straight face and tell them that Alex has the Pillar of Light in his hand.
Yeah, he needs to find a way of communicating that without it being obvious
so now
why
it becomes
that's an issue.
extremely obvious to Alex and his teammates that Chris has just drawn some sort of bomb that dies to the Pillar of Light in Alex's hand. So Chris cannot be happy with what just happened. This is one of those situations where
the dark side of team play.
The dark side of team play becomes a reality.
I mean, Chris is just hearing in his head over and over again, Festa Gloom, Festa Gloom, Festa. That's all he wants to see. You know, as powerful as Ob Nixilis is, right now he just wants to end this nightmare full of spirits and go back to a more regular, easier, happier time in Magic. So he's sacrificing his Generator Servant. That means he's got a couple of mana left open. One of those mana can be used, in principle, to give Ob Nixilis... Oh no, it's only red creatures that he can give haste. But Generator Servant gives it haste anyway, so he's able to come in with both of these creatures here and force a decision by Alex West. He knows that the pillar's there, so he's got to get whatever he can get going with Ob Nixilis happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I mean, it just seems like it's a pretty rough spot for him. I think he's just hoping that blocks go a certain way so that he might be able to top deck his way out of this.
So sometimes we refer to something as a desperation attack. So like when you can see that you're facing lethal, you just kind of send everything into the red zone and say, well, maybe it'll just magically work out. I mean, Alex West is on 4, which is vaguely relevant, but Pillar of Light here dealing with the only threat that Chris Fennell has. 5 damage coming through from Alex West here, and look what's coming next, Razorfoot Griffin. And as it turns out, Chris Fennell does have the answer. A massive fist pump from him there as he shows what's left in his hand. That, a Covenant of Blood, just sat on the middle of the table there. Alex West reeling. Basically, all that Chris Fennell wanted to do there was to say, I want you to just tap out, do things, just don't do anything that means that you're going to have an answer to this Covenant of Blood. So I'm just going to have a turn where I'm just going to let you play your Pillar of Light. I'm going to let you do your thing so that when it gets to the following turn, I can play